Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Battle. I am Michael Adams. My panelists tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King, Steelers Nation South, Rollo Coffin. We are going to be discussing the surfaces of the tennis court tonight and then a Q&A as always for our guests. And our guest tonight, we are joined by a tennis player who played in 8 Fed Cups, 2 Olympic Games for Team Mexico, ITF, WTA, 194 career wins, 4 titles, the greatest Mexican-born tennis player of all time. We want to welcome here Angelica Gavaldon. Thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited. Thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. And as I just said, we're going to have a Q&A. We're going to get into her career here in a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the services, and we're going to start tonight with hard court, which I know is going to be one of Angelica's favorites here. But so obviously made of concrete or asphalt with a top layer of acrylic or resin, and that's what gives it a little bit of a cushion here. But I imagine that it's probably the worst on a person's knees. The famous hard courts, we got Arthur Ashe Stadium, the Billie Jean King National Tennis Courts, these courts are used in the U.S. Open and the Australia Open. Those are the 2 biggest ones out there. Hard courts, you need a good baseline game and speed. And they've been using hard courts since 1940, so it goes way, way back. And today it is the most used surface type on the professional tour. So, Angelica, I know 3 of your 4 titles came on hard courts. What made you so successful on them? And in general, how can a player be successful on those courts?
Well, I think the reason I was successful on hard court is because I grew up training on hard court. And I think, most of the tournaments I played were in California and also in Tijuana, where I'm from, my hometown. And hard court is the main surface there. And my coach developed my game to be able to perform my game on that surface. I feel that I was a good aggressive baseline player. I came on the tour when the game was changing a little bit. There were not much serve and volleyers left. They were kind of almost retiring, like Navratilova and Sukova and all the big volleyers in the game and the slides. So that was kind of dying already when I started playing. And my coach always had me play on top of the baseline to play a little more aggressive. So I adapted really well to that surface. It was definitely my strength. And there were always different hard courts of speeds, like the U.S. Open that you mentioned. I liked playing there because it was a little faster, and I always found myself playing better when the ball didn't seem as heavy. So I played well there, and I always had a harder time, even though I had some good results, but I always had a harder time playing in Indian Wells because the ball seemed a lot heavier and the hard court a lot slower. And because my game was so flat, I felt that I adapted better to a faster hard court.
Excellent. Let's see, Brian, bring us your first court.
I'm going to talk about clay courts. Most famous clay court in the world have to be court Felipe Chartres Roland Garros. The 2024 Olympic tennis tournament was held there, and of course that's the annual spot of the French Open, one of pro tennis's majors. For the ATP, there are 3 clay seasons. There's a South American season, which is played during the winter months here in North America, the spring season, and the summer season. The WTA also has a spring and summer season as well. The undisputed king of clay, definitely Rafael Nadal. He won an astounding 14 French Open titles at the Roland Garros there in Paris, and an insane 96.6 match win percentage. The Queen of Clay, a little bit more of a debate. You got Iga Swiatek. She's got 93.3 all-time win percentage, but then you go back to Chris Evert. At one point, she won 125 matches in a row on clay, a streak that spanned from 1973 to 1979.
Wow.
So Why is Nadal dominated all these years on clay? What does his game do on that clay?
I feel that it's definitely an advantage for the Spaniards and just in general, the players that grew up training on clay, because their game, if you look at Nadal versus like someone like, I don't know, an American player like Taylor Fritz, or the, the, the Spaniards, learned to hit a much heavier ball. Their game is, I mean, I think they're physically just so fit and they can stay out there for hours. I mean, it's hard when you hit a flatter ball to the shots that are winners always come back. You know, the points, instead of being 10, 12 rallies, they're I don't know, 12 ball rallies are like 30 ball rallies. And I feel that you have to be very, very steady, very consistent. You have to have a lot of power. You have to definitely hit a lot of heavy spin. You have to stand behind the baseline a little more. For me, when I had to prepare for clay courts, my dad used to take me to, I don't know if you guys heard of Jose Guerras, who's from Spain, who's one of the best coaches, and a clay court expert. So he was in Palm Springs and I would go train with him. And I remember the first couple of times I trained with him, I was so upset because he would tell me, Angelica, you can't be standing on top of the baseline just trying to rip every ball. You have to stand a little bit back, try to hit a heavier, higher ball over the net, because your game is not going to work on clay. You're not going to be able to dominate. And I feel that, you know, how you move and how you slide. It's really hard if you don't grow up on clay court to learn to slide to the ball. And it's just, I think the advantage for Nadal definitely is that, you know, he's from Spain and that's where he grew up. Also, the clay court in Europe is much, much thicker and heavier. So it's definitely a strength, and his game is it's unbelievable to be able to dominate consistently.
Rollo, what's your court?
I got grass, so I'm gonna just do one thing here. Wimbledon. So grass is the original tennis surface, and of course Wimbledon is the only major that is played on grass. There are very few tournaments left in tennis that are played on grass. There are only 7 tournaments on the ATP and 6 on the WTA, but there are none in the WTA 1000 events. Wimbledon, grass courts tend to be slippery and the ball skids and bounces low while retaining its speed. It's why some of the most aggressive players like to play on grass, and players with powerful serves and play close to the net have the most success. Pete Sampras dominated Wimbledon, winning 7 titles in 8 years from 93 to 2000. But Roger Federer is the all-time leader with 8 titles, with Sampras and Novak Djokovic with 7. And the women's side, Martina Navratilova, she's got 9 singles titles, with Steffi Graf and Serena Williams with 7. But Martina has 16 titles on grass between singles and doubles. That's incredible.
Amazing.
So why is grass dying out? Do you have any idea? Like, why are we not using that anymore?
Well, when I used to play, I mean, it really was only Wimbledon and maybe some pre-warm-up tournaments. And I always felt every time I would go play on grass, I always felt that it felt like a different sport. I mean, it's so different the way you have to play, especially for me, it was because I'm a baseliner and I was but I felt that if I trained enough on it and I played pre-warm-up tournaments, I did okay at Wimbledon. I had, you know, some good wins against, I beat Majoli, I think, there after she won Roland Garros. She was 3 in the world at the time, or 5, I think. And I had good wins on it when I was prepared. Like if I prepared early and I kind of try to adapt my game to it and move, because the ball definitely bounces really, really low. I wasn't a net player, but for some reason I adapted better to grass court than clay. And the year that I didn't, because I kind of dreaded it a little bit, the grass court tournaments. And one of the years I remember telling my team, I don't want to go and play those 2 weeks of pre-warm-up tournaments. I just don't like grass. So I went straight to Wimbledon like 3 days before. I lost 0-0. 6-love, 6-love. I'll never forget it. In like less than 30 minutes. It was so embarrassing and humiliating. I said, I'll never do that again. I need to prepare because it's tough to adapt, but definitely servant volleyers like Sampras, and which we don't have a lot of them anymore, or none probably, that played like Sampras. Probably have, a harder time playing on it. But, you see also Spaniards doing great on it. So I don't know. I just think it's the preparation.
Brian, what's our final surface?
All right, so I got carpet courts, and I mean, you think grass is getting rare? I mean, carpet courts are definitely becoming more and more of a thing of the past. The ATP ended their use of carpet courts in 2009, and the WTA Tour no longer has any women's tournaments on carpet. That ended in 2018. Both associations cited injuries and player safety as reasons for the exclusion of these types of surfaces. The Taipei Open was the final WTA Tour tournament on carpet. A couple of players like Mario Ansic and Joe Wilfried Songa, they objected to these changes because they both believe that carpet surfaces have value. They're needed to help players develop the ability to play on hard courts, which are also fast-paced. The developmental ATP Challenger Tour has since decided to retain some of their carpet events. So although their popularity has waned, carpet courts still have their place in the tennis world.
So why is it gone from the pros, and how did you do on them?
I mean, if I recall correctly, I didn't play that many on carpet. I know there were some indoor ones, if I recall correctly. But I feel I adapted well because it was a quicker pace, which I liked, and I love playing indoors for some reason. And the tournaments I played on carpet were indoors, so I think I did okay with them in them. I don't really know why they are not gonna have them anymore. I mean, I can't really. I played also an exhibition in Mexico against Graf on carpet, and I really like that. But I mean, the injury, unless why injury? I would think it would be easier on your body, the surface on hard court because it's softer. So unless I don't know that there are uneven spots on it, that's the only way. I mean, that would be a risk, but I don't think the WTA would have tournaments where the carpet's not right. But I don't know. It doesn't make sense, the injury part. But
That's the
who
first
knows?
thing that's the first thing I thought too. Like, carpet's supposed to be soft. I wonder why there'd be a lot of injuries. That's weird.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Well, we hope that everyone enjoyed a little history there and then thoughts on some of the surfaces. Let's move into our Q&A. Rollo, Brian, me.
Angelica, 1995 Wimbledon. You upset Iva Maholi, who was the 11th seed. Tell us about that match. You lost the first set, dominated the next 2 sets. Tell us about that match and what do you remember most about it?
It's so funny because I remember a lot of my matches, and I remember that one very well. She had just won Roland Garros, so I knew she was going to come in very confident. And I was getting killed. I think I was losing like 6-1 to love. And at the time, my coach, Mario Tavares from Cuba, he was watching me, and he was sitting behind my chair. I was actually down 6-1 3-love, I think, if I recall correctly. And he just said something to me among the lines, like kind of a bad word in Spanish. Said like F you, like something like not F you, but like F-U-C-K. Can you please just make 2 or 3 balls in a row in the court and give her like just rally and get in the point. And that's how I remember shifting my focus and thinking, okay, I'm just gonna make 3 balls inside the court because I'm like making so many mistakes. And for some reason, the momentum of the match changed. And I started to be a little more consistent and I ended up winning. And that's the memory I have of that match, that my coach was really upset at me, but it worked.
Angelica, I'm sure our audience would be interested in knowing how it got all started for you. At what age did you begin playing tennis, and who was your main inspiration?
I started playing when I was 6. I remember I watched Wimbledon on TV, and I was living in Tijuana at the time, and I was in my parents' bedroom just watching, and I remember watching Hannah Mandlikova and Chris Evert and Mary Jo, and for some reason I told my dad, "Oh, I'm gonna be playing there one day. I want to learn tennis." And I mean, I don't know. We were members at a club, and then my dad was a tennis fan, so they would go and just throw balls at me and then started putting me in tennis lessons. And it's almost like there was no plan. There was nothing really like, oh, you're going to play pro, you're going to compete. It's like everything just happened really fast. At 14, I played my first pro tournament. At 9 years of age, I was playing with Monica Seles. We won the international doubles. And it just, I can't really tell you like, oh, it's because I did this or that. I mean, it was just something that I really was passionate about. People ask me, and the word that I can describe it, the only word that describes perfectly my mindset was I was obsessed. It was my obsession to play and train and eat and breakfast, lunch, dinner, tennis, tennis, tennis. And that's how it happened.
So you played in an era that was dominated by Steffi Graf, whom you defeated, I might add. I'll throw that in there. How did you fare against her overall? And would you say that there was one player that you felt every time you went out there, like you weren't going to be able to beat her, and maybe the opposite too, a player you go out there every time against, you're like, oh, I got this in the bag?
I think for me, it was very, I think that for me, it was very important, my mindset that I had and what period in my life and in my career I was in. I think the issue I had is that I wasn't consistent with my results. Some as we all are, there's more information out there. There's like how hard it is mentally. I had success at a very young age, but I can tell you that in my mind, when I had my best wins, I never was afraid of anyone. I never feared anyone. I had so much confidence in myself that I felt that I could defeat any top 10 player in the world. And I had a lot of top 10 player, I beat a lot of top 10 players. And I remember I had a streak that every tournament I was getting to the semis and quarters, and my coach, I remember him telling me, if you keep this up, you're going to be top 10 in the world by the end of the year. And I really would gain momentum, and then for some reason that maybe I wasn't mentally strong to face some of my circumstances in my personal life, I didn't really know how to manage that. I was very young, and I felt that I wasn't as mentally strong to be able to handle whatever was going on with my life outside the court. And so to be honest, I never really felt that I never feared anyone. I mean, now, people would comment that I was short, or that maybe my serve wasn't strong enough. But when I competed, I never felt that was an issue for me ever. Like, I didn't even think I had a weak serve. I didn't think I was one of the shortest ones on the tour. I felt a giant out there. I really felt that that I could play against somebody that was 6'3", and I was never intimidated, but not in an arrogant way. I was just confident in myself. And I mean, I respected every player. I knew everybody was really good and that I could lose to anyone, but I could beat anyone, but I was never scared of anyone. The only ones that when they came on tour that I was not fear, but I thought, wow, I mean, they're really strong. Were the Williams sisters, but I never got to play them. But other than that, I mean, I think that's why, my coach always told me, if you're playing against the number one player in the world, it's because you belong there and you earned your spot there. So that means you can beat her. So that was pretty much how I thought.
So Angelica, after you retired, you got into coaching. You were coach of the year in 2014. So it's two. What made you get into coaching? And when somebody's not listening, do you say, listen, I beat Steffi Graf?
No. Especially kids, they're like, who's that? Like, they don't know. Kids have no idea who Agassi is, or I have to like really study and adapt to tennis now, because I'm telling you, sometimes I would like throw in a name, like I would think they were impressed and they're like, who? Who's Andre Agassi? Or like, oh, or who's Sampras? Nobody knows. The kids especially, but no, I never do that, and I'll tell you why. I had an experience when I was on the tour. I had a coach that I'm not gonna name, but he had played on tour, and he was very successful, and he coached me for a while. And if I learned something from that experience, was that I said, if I ever become a coach, I will never do what this person does. I feel that when you're a player, everything is centered around you, right? About the schedule, your training, your whole team is there to help you and help you achieve your goals. And it's all about the player. Your only job as a player is to go out there and perform and focus and win. And when I became a coach, I was very aware of that experience I had. And I said, I will never talk about myself with any players that I coach. I would use my experiences if it's suitable to the situation that they're going through, to help them, but never to talk about my wins or my career or any of that, because I don't think it really helps in any way. I'm not going to fix a forehand, or I'm not going to fix a technical issue, or I'm not going to help them strategize a point with bragging about myself, but I do feel that if I had an experience or something that I went through that could help them in some way, I definitely do share that. But I feel that when I made the transition, I was very conscious that now my role was to help the player develop their full potential and to help them achieve whatever dreams they have. And I'm always aware of that it's about them and it's not about me. It's about how I can help them and serve them.
Angelica, if I understand correctly, you retired at the age of 26, right?
Yeah.
And that was what, 9 years of pro tennis, I believe. So,
Yeah.
so how did you know that it was time to move on at that point in time?
I had stopped before too. Actually, at 16, I had like a few times that I stopped playing, and I feel that definitely now players retire a lot older. I think they're physically a lot fitter and they have a lot longer careers. When I played, I think it was more that players would retire younger. I feel that I reached a point in my career that the players that I thought were not that good before, I started seeing them that they were actually really good. I felt I was very when devoted and disciplined and very obsessive with my training. And I got to a point where I just dreaded being on the court. It was very hard for me before my final retirement, because I had stopped playing a few times. And, you know, it's what I had done my whole life since I was 6 years of age. So it was at 26, it was an easy decision because I was very sure that I had reached my potential. But I think it was just that. I think Sampras said it too one time, that he just, you know, waking up and you have this feeling that, gosh, I can't practice. I don't have that desire and that drive. And I think for a player or somebody successful, what really gets them to the top or to reach to their potential is the drive you have inside. And I just lost that drive to compete.
So I read an article about your eating struggles and how you said that you were obsessed with food. And I was just wondering, like, how do you use, kind of building off Rollo's question, how do you use those experiences now in helping others lead healthier lifestyles?
I think when I was in my career, when I was during my career, I had, and I think now it's a lot more talked about than before. There's a lot of disorder eating, a lot of depression. For me, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, and also I struggled with my eating. I think, you know, with getting a lot of help and being in therapy and getting with the right team of people really helped me to turn it around. It's something that I feel that needs even more awareness, because one of the players I remember recently, actually Anne Grossman, she told me, you know, when we played, there wasn't a lot of issues like now. And I looked at her, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I had issues, but I just wouldn't talk about it, you know, because I think there's so much stigma and on the topic before. So when a lot of players come out now and talk about it, I think it's great, because I also feel, you know, some sort of comfort and hope that just having a voice about it can help, you know, other athletes and just regular people. I, you know, I always try to, if I encounter someone or a player or somebody close to me that has what I had or something, or a mental health disorder, you know, I try to use my example and tell them, you know, not to feel shame, to get help. And it's just, once you learn about what it really is, a lot of people struggle with it. And it's just like having, I always say, it's like having a physical disease. It's like a cancer, diabetes. Sometimes you need medication, you need therapy, you need to get help, because it's, you know, you're not alone. Many people struggle with it. And I'm happy that I was able to get the right help. And I still have to be sometimes in therapy because it's something that it's part of me, and it's not shameful, and it's something that helps me also help other people that may be struggling with something similar.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing with us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you guys so much for inviting me. I enjoyed talking to you guys.
I remind
You
everybody
guys,
hit that.
I learned a lot too. I was like, wow,
Oh.
you guys are like an encyclopedia.
Well, I remind everybody hit that like, subscribe, and that notification button. Always very important. We'll We'll see everybody next time. Have a great night.